name is Genesis Amaris Kemp. I am currently in the big old state of Texas. I am Caribbean descent, Caribbean South American descent. I'm also the author of Chocolate Drop in Corporate America From the Pit to the Palace. I have two editions on the market. Then I recently helped co-author a book that's called Don't Let It Ruin the Life. No, Don't Ruin the Life of the Party by a Jamaican author named Shanique MJ Davis. And then I was in an anthology book for stories of COVID-19 and how it impacted people. And since then, I've just been, rolling with the punches that gives me and taking all those lemons out there and making lemonades and just really flipping the script on the perspective and coaching people who wanted to know more about diversity, equity, and inclusion and how they could push the needle forward in um, their current professional status as well as their life. And that's pretty much.
Perfect. I love that. So, you mentioned diversity and inclusion, and what I wanted to mention before we've continued dive in is that I think, and I said this before when we first met, that's such a beautiful area to be in because you're helping people of different walks of life and you're making a difference. I want to say, continue doing that. It's an amazing job. Um, I touch on that because in Canada, actually, we just we have a certain issue that has happened. The government has announced that they found 215 indigenous Native Canadian babies in the ground because what was happening, there was a school that they would take these children from their families and try to strip them of their culture. So to hear you still have that passion and that strength for that, it's an amazing journey. And I want to say thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Oh, I almost want to scale back they to your statement. They found 215 indigenous babies in the ground.
Yeah. So what the story, and I'm still following up on it, is that this was like maybe years ago. The school was actually just stopped in 1996. So it was not even that long ago. Like people probably think 60s, 70s when everything was just crazy.
Hmm.
But there's these schools that were to educate children, and what they were doing was they were taking children from these communities, and what they found is that many of them have died. People did survive, and they spoke about the horrific situations and the conditions and how they're forced to clean and things like that, and how they weren't allowed to wear their traditional community clothing or speak the language. It was just, it's a painful time for Canada. Just, and another reminder that so many years ago, there's still dark pages in a lot of people's history. But
Hmm.
as Canadians, we are coming together and celebrating the love and the beauty of this community.
Mm. And that story kind of, when as you were sharing more about the story, it kind of hit home because here in the States, they were trying to say they didn't want to teach African American history or Black history because they don't want some students to relive some of the trauma. But I was like, history is history, and people should know about history. And in my opinion, I don't think that they really taught Black history when I was going to school, like in high school or middle school. And the reason why I say that, because even though like I am, Black American, my parents were foreigners and they didn't have to go through what a Black American went through in terms of, maybe someone was a slave in their family or the segregation or anything like that. Because whenever you come from a foreign country, in my family, we have all types of mixtures and, races that are mixed in and etc. So I remember whenever I was working for this Fortune 500 company, we had a Black History Month program and they had the National Negro Anthem. And I looked to some of my peers, and at the time it was all African Americans who came together for this particular program. And I said, "What is that?" And they're like, "The National Negro Anthem." And I was like, "Oh, I wasn't taught that." And they pretty much told me, "What school did you go to?" And I was like, "Oh, I went to the school in this area." And they said, "Was it predominantly Caucasian?" I said, "Yeah, I guess so. Caucasian, and there was a few minorities here and there." And they're like, "Well, baby, we learned this in school." And I'm like, "Sorry, I didn't, I wasn't taught that at my school." So I feel like people like me who identify as, African American, or people see me and like, "Oh, yep, that's she's just a black girl or a brown girl." You can't say that I really know African American history if it wasn't taught to me and I didn't have parents to teach it to me, because that wasn't necessarily their history. And I was like, "Oh my gosh," and when I heard it on the news where they said they didn't wanna teach it in schools anymore, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a part of history." Would you take out Christopher Columbus out of the history book? Would you take out some of the other history out the history book? So why would you try to take out African American history or Black history out of some of the curriculum?